Well, good morning and welcome to the Mitchell S. Karnes podcast. Last time in this how I write and how my process is, I talked about the inspiration, things that spark that imagination that eventually become a story. And so I wanted to talk before I get to that about expanding it is that the advice I gave to someone else is that if you don't love your story, how would you expect anyone else to? And so I want to kind of enhance that and say, if you're not passionate about the story, how would you expect your readers to be passionate about it? And so the ideas that I get, and some of them still end up in files, and some of those files are probably 3 decades old. And so I still haven't done anything with them. It's because I've had better ideas. And so this is all about the water grave, the least of these, the cleansing, countdown, et cetera, the Abbey Rhodes Mystery Series. And so this is how I want. And so I wore this shirt appropriate to this. It says, I'm a writer. We dream while awake. And so once I get the idea, it just starts, melding in my mind, starts clicking here and there, scenarios start running, and it fleshes it out. This is a series where I actually came up with a character before I came up with the story. I had, Abbey Road, a Beatles album that I loved growing up. And so Abbey Rhodes sounded like a cool name for a character. And then I started playing with the idea about using the Beatles lyrics for a mystery and solving that. And that ends up becoming in book 4, how that works out. But specifically, the first book, Watergrave, which we will start filming for a streaming series August 10th of this year. Watergrave came to an idea. I was a pastor. I'd gotten cancer the second time. I was dealing with all kinds of side effects from the bone marrow process, and I just didn't feel like I could do the job that needed to be done physically. I was also teaching at the time, so I was a bivocational pastor teaching high school English, and I couldn't do it. I was getting sick all the time, and so I ended up coming back and joining our family business, which I can work out of the home, and started writing again after the chemo brain kind of wore off and the ideas came back to me. So I had decided as a pastor that I needed to step aside as an older pastor, and hopefully that some young pastor would come in with lots of ideas, lots of things that he could do uh, for the church and to grow where I couldn't grow and have all that energy that I didn't have. And so I was cleaning up after Sunday morning, which you normally do with the bulletins and things like that, taking them out of the pews and just kind of straightening up. And I looked up at the baptistry, and what flashed in my mind was this young pastor floating at the top of the baptistry dead. And so then from that little impetus of water grave, um, it started going and started piecing out together. And as an older pastor, knowing in the small church how difficult it is to exact change, how difficult would that be for a young pastor coming in and trying to do that? And then who would want him dead? And so that's how the story of Watergrave grew out. So, as a mystery, what I've learned to do, and since I was new to these really, is okay, I came with the answer, uh, and I worked myself backwards. So, once I decided who was going to be the person to kill him, then I started piecing in all of the ways I could plant those clues for that person, and then plant what we call red herrings, uh, logical assumptions that you would have to pursue someone who is a person of interest who later become a suspect, so that the reader would have opportunities, as Abby does, to go through the story and start following these leads, eliminating them one by one until she finally gets to the one that actually is the murderer. But there was a complication, and I think I talked last time with the ideas that with Abby, I had to write so much backstory, and some of the backstory will come through with these 6 books, and some of it won't. You don't have to know all of it, but it pieces by, and so each mystery, each case that she gets starts this process where she has to deal with her past. And so I wasn't just looking at one book, I was looking at 6 books at least for her story arc. Once we had signed the contract for Watergrave. I went back with my agent. My agent went to my publisher, and we signed for six because I thought, with all of this backstory and all this baggage that she's going to have, all this trauma that she has to deal with, it wouldn't be right and it wouldn't be realistic to have that resolve in one book. So I wasn't just piecing the story of Watergrave, I was piecing the story of Abbey Rhodes. And so that became leaving clues now that became Easter eggs for book two, book three, book four, book five, and book six. How do you plan all that? And that to me is the absolute fun part, doing all of these things and just kind of playing with the game. And it was like one of those little puzzles. I don't know if you've ever seen those, but it has all the squares and there's only one open, and you've got to figure out how to get them all together. Slide this one here so you can slide that one up. That's how this puzzle was for me. And I just loved it. I was passionate about it, and I still am. And I can't wait to write the next book. And I can't wait to write the one after that. And I can't wait to see this on film. And I'm just so excited about it. So, Watergrave, the tagline that I gave was um, that a young pastor is found dead in the baptistry of his own church, and Abby has to investigate the one place that she swore never to return, and that's the church. And so, whoa, plant that seed. Why wouldn't she want to go back to the church? What happens in her past? What's her baggage? So she has to investigate this church murder, and she is paired with uh, an older detective who is just biding his time. He just picks the first logical suspect and he goes with it. He wants to resolve the case without a lot of work, without a lot of effort. And so he's apathetic. She is eager. She's at the very beginning. She's just served, 3 years in the Army as an MP. She served 3 years in East Nashville as a patrol officer. And now she is a homicide detective, what she's wanted to be all this time. So she's eager and upcoming. And Sam Tidwell, her partner, is kind of stagnant. He's staying there. So he's disgruntled, she's excited, but now they both have a place they don't want to go, and that's the church. And you learn that a little bit about Sam, that he just resents the church. She resents it for a different reason, and you find out her baggage as it comes through. So all of those complications dealing with this mystery. And it was like taking a thread and another thread and another thread and weaving those all together, where eventually they go, oh man, those all come together. Those are all part of the same thing. And that's what I wanted to do with Watergrave. And so the next book idea came to me when I was driving home from that church one day, and as Interstate 65 joins in, and there's 265 this way and 4024 going that way. Right off on the river, there was a huge homeless encampment. All these blue tarps and these makeshift shelters right there on the river. And so one day I went down there and I looked at it and took pictures of the area, talked to some people that were homeless, and I started going with that idea of um, a double homicide, because East Nashville, or Nashville, is trying to develop that east side of the riverbank right by the Titans Stadium and develop that into kind of an upper class um, home and entertainment center. And so you had wealth on one side and you had these homeless on the other. And that was like my mind was like, boom, what happened if we have two murders? And one is the homeless camp, which no one really cares about the people, and the other is of this wealthy developer's son. And that became the contrast that I do. And so my theme on that was that every life matters. And you start working out. And so the homicide came to piece. And how can I tie those two things together? And how will they end up? And so that one was a really, really fun one for me as well. But my advice to you is when you find an idea, whatever it is, whether it's a mystery, whether it's just mainline fiction, whether it's a romance, you've got to understand, what is it that you want to write? What is it that you want to say as an author? And you don't have to teach anybody, but you do want them to leave with something, to be thinking about something, um, to change at least their mind by the time they finish what you've written. And so you take this story and you start giving the idea, and you have a goal where you want to do. Well, I know in math, the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. In fiction, you don't want to draw a straight line. That would be boring. If they would know from the very beginning where you're going and what's going to happen, why bother reading it? They could just read the back jacket of your book, and that would be it. So you want complications. What's going to stop them from their goal? What's going to keep them from their goal? What's going to complicate their goal? Sometimes those are internal things. Sometimes those are external things. You have that antagonist, and there's so many conflicts. And if you remember from school, as we developed those, that man versus self, that man versus society, that man versus nature. Well, all of those kind of play in together. You have your main one, but you also have those minor ones that play in and help complicate. But you've got to weave it in. You've got to have a story where the arc is, it's not so easy for your main character to reach that goal. You want them to reach the goal, but you've also got had to make this interesting. Life is not easy. Think about all the things that you wanted to do in your life and where you wanted to be at this point in your life, and what happened along that way um, to make this take so long. Here I am with my series. This is, I've written 9 books. I had 5 before I started this series, and they did marginally well. These are still doing marginally well, but it's gotten the interest now to have a streaming series made out of it. And so I'm 63, and it took this long in my life for that happen. I've been wanting to write, and of course, in 6th grade, I was going to write bestsellers, and I was going to write bestsellers that became movies. Well, not in the bestseller list yet, but one of mine's becoming a movie, a film, streaming. And so that's a goal that I've waited since 6th grade to attain. I wasn't always on the track of writing. I wasn't always developing that, but I've had to grow as an author, and I had to come to a place where I understood that. And um, I've said this so many times before, but I'm just going to repeat it again. When one of my writing professors said, great idea or great ending, where's the story? And another one of my writing professors said, uh, Mitchell, you want to have written. When you want to write, you'll have a good story. Those are the things I had to learn. I had to overcome. I had to develop as a writer to get to this point. Now I love writing. I can't wait for people to read it. I want to talk to people about what they thought and what challenges they had. And when I get that feedback from like books 3 and 4, I couldn't put it down. That just thrills my soul. So writing to me is about sharing with someone what I want to give to them and what I want them to see and learn and experience. And if I can get them to identify with any of my characters where they become part of the story, whether I'm a bestseller or not, I've won. Hope that helps taking the inspiration and developing in a story. We're going to talk a little bit more about that next week on what happens after that, after you've pieced it together in mind. How do you go and put that on paper? I hope you'll enjoy this series and just keep following me on it. Again, reminder, Mitchell S. Karnes, that's Karnes, author.com. That's my website. Go in there, send me a note, correspond with me, send me your questions. Tell me where you are in your writing process and what you can't overcome, and I'll see if I can help you. I've had so many people invest in my life. I'd love to invest in yours. Thanks.